A wheelchair jolts. An apple skids across marble. Lily's chair teeters on the fountain's edge as chants explode. Wheels spin, wheels spin. Phones rise like vultures, and at the courtyard's edge, one boy stands. But when he steps forward, will he save her or destroy himself? Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, back to our story. Some students laughed, others looked away. At the edge of the courtyard, Jamal Robinson closed his geometry notebook. Calm, steady, watching. The bullies didn't notice him stand, not yet. And when he did, nothing in that pristine academy would ever be the same. This is a story about cruelty, courage, and the quiet strength that rises when you least expect it. Where wealth meets discipline, and true protection comes from the most unexpected source. Lily Carter knew isolation like a shadow that never left. At 11 years old, she had already lost more than most adults could bear. Her mother, Catherine, the warm-voiced woman who once braided her hair while humming lullabies, was gone. A car accident had taken her 3 years ago, leaving behind only memories and the wheelchair Lily now called her prison. "The world doesn't care how you move through it, Lily," her mother once said. "It cares about how brightly you shine." But Lily didn't feel like she shone anymore. Not at Crestview Academy. She navigated hallways like obstacle courses, each turn a potential ambush. Whispered nicknames trailed her like ghosts. Wheel Girl. Daddy's broken doll. Can't your father's billions fix you? She hated that one most, because while Daniel Carter had more money than anyone could spend in 10 lifetimes, it couldn't restore what Lily wanted more than anything: to run again, to dance, to feel normal. Daniel Carter, tech entrepreneur and self-made billionaire, tried to be a father, but he spoke in acquisitions and investments, not comfort or presence. After Catherine died, his love for Lily disappeared beneath meetings, deals, and handshakes that mattered more than her therapy appointments. He didn't mean to abandon his daughter, but absence leaves wounds just the same. So Lily retreated. She ate alone. She kept her eyes on her books. She carried her mother's words like armor, even when her heart shattered under the weight of daily cruelty. And across town, another child carried a different kind of loss. Jamal Robinson was no stranger to being underestimated. His uncle, Marcus Robinson, was once the pride of their neighborhood, a respected martial arts instructor. He believed the dojo wasn't just about fighting, it was salvation. In streets where kids found trouble before opportunity, Marcus offered discipline. His code was simple, repeated until it lived in Jamal's muscles and mind. Never throw the first punch. Never fight for ego. Protect the weak. Jamal was 12 when cancer claimed his uncle, just 6 months ago. One day, his laughter filled their garage-turned-dojo. The next, silence. His mother, Keisha, worked double shifts at the hospital, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. Bills accumulated on their kitchen table like unwelcome guests. Clothes came from donation bins, shoes worn at the edges. But what Jamal inherited wasn't money. It was his uncle's discipline. He trained alone in their makeshift dojo, bowing to memories. Every stance, every block was a conversation with the man who taught him strength wasn't about domination. But he didn't boast, didn't demonstrate. He blended in at Crestview Academy. Just another scholarship student they pretended not to see. The whispers followed him too. Charity case, scholarship boy, doesn't belong here. Yet behind his silence was steel. Where Lily endured, Jamal observed. Where she suffered, he prepared. They were two children from different worlds. One surrounded by wealth but starved of presence. The other lacking resources, but rich in purpose. Both invisible in their own way. Both judged for circumstances beyond their control. And fate placed them in the same courtyard on a day that would change everything. For Lily, every school day was endurance. For Jamal, every moment was restraint. Neither asked to be tested. But life always tests the quiet ones, because bullies always target the vulnerable. And what they didn't know was that neither Lily nor Jamal was truly weak. One carried her mother's memory, like a light refusing to dim. The other carried his uncle's code, like fire in his veins. They were the kind of children the world overlooks, until the moment it can't anymore. Jamal watched the scene unfold, his uncle's voice echoing in his mind. 6 months ago, in their cramped garage gym, the smell of old rubber mats and determination filling the air. Uncle Marcus, adjusting his stance, hands steady on Jamal's shoulders. Your body remembers what your mind practices, Uncle Marcus had said, demonstrating a defensive block. Every move has purpose. Every stance tells a story. Sweat had dripped down Jamal's temple as he mirrored his uncle's movements. The garage walls covered with faded posters of martial arts legends and a single framed certificate. Marcus Robinson, 3rd degree black belt. But why train so hard if we're not supposed to fight? Jamal had asked, breathing hard. Uncle Marcus's eyes had softened then. He lowered himself to one knee, meeting Jamal at eye level. Real strength ain't about winning fights, Jamal. It's about stopping them. The memory shifted to another day, walking home from the corner store with Uncle Marcus. 3 teenagers surrounding a homeless man, kicking his cart, scattering his meager possessions across the sidewalk. Uncle Marcus hadn't hesitated. No dramatic entrance, no threats. He simply stepped between the teenagers and the man, his presence a wall. That's enough, he'd said, voice quiet but firm. Mind your business, old man, one teen had sneered. This is my business, Uncle Marcus had replied. Protecting those who can't protect themselves is everyone's business. The teens had looked at each other, calculating. Something in Uncle Marcus's stance, the perfect balance, the absolute stillness, made them reconsider. They'd backed away, muttering threats that dissolved into the air. Later, helping the man gather his belongings, Uncle Marcus had whispered to Jamal, remember this moment. You don't fight because you can. You stand up because you must. Now, in Crestview Academy's courtyard, Jamal closed his notebook and stood. No dramatic gesture, no announcement, just purpose in every movement. The chanting continued as he approached. Wheel spin, wheel spin. Tyler Blackwood's designer sneakers gleamed under the courtyard sun. Senator Blackwood's son, his family name emblazoned across half the city's buildings. Beside him, Marcus Chen scrolled through his latest model phone, recording Lily's humiliation. His father's tech company valued at billions. Brad Thornton completed the trio, real estate royalty, his family's developments, reshaping skylines across 3 states. They were untouchable. Everyone knew it. The teachers knew it. The principal knew it. Their parents' donations built the East Wing, funded the STEM lab, endowed the scholarships that allowed students like Jamal to attend. Tyler noticed Jamal approaching, his smile faltering momentarily, before widening with new opportunity. "What do you want, scholarship?" he called, loud enough for everyone to hear the distinction. Jamal didn't rush. Each step measured, deliberate. The courtyard noise dimmed as students turned to watch this unexpected development. "Leave her alone," Jamal said. 3 words, spoken without heat, without drama, just certainty. The courtyard fell silent, not from fear, from shock. No one challenged Tyler Blackwood. No one interfered with his entertainment, especially not a scholarship student whose mother worked double shifts to keep the lights on. Tyler's laugh cut through the silence. "Are you serious right now?" He looked around, inviting the crowd to join his amusement. Some nervous laughter rippled through the onlookers. "You think you get to tell me what to do?" Jamal didn't answer. His eyes moved to Lily, seeing the fear behind her anger, the trembling hands gripping her wheelchair. "I'm talking to you, charity case." Tyler stepped closer, his height advantage meant to intimidate. "And I'm not talking to you," Jamal replied, gaze steady. "I'm telling you, leave her alone." Tyler's face flushed. Being ignored was worse than being challenged. He turned back to Lily, grabbing her wheelchair handles. "You know what? I think Princess needs a swimming lesson." With a sharp push, he shoved Lily's wheelchair toward the courtyard fountain. The marble edge gleamed in the sunlight, water splashing just inches away. Lily gasped, her chair tilting dangerously at the fountain's edge, front wheels lifting slightly off the ground. Her physics textbook slid from her lap, splashing into the water. Jamal moved, not lunging, not attacking, intercepting. His body positioned itself between the wheelchair and the fountain in one fluid motion. His hand steadied the chair with practiced precision, stopping its momentum without jarring Lily further. The crowd gasped. This wasn't just interference now. This was direct opposition. Jamal stabilized the wheelchair, ensuring Lily was secure before turning to face Tyler. He positioned himself between the bullies and Lily, his stance relaxed but ready, just as Uncle Marcus had taught him. "You want to get to her," Jamal said, voice still calm, despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "You go through me." Phones rose higher around the courtyard. This was no longer just entertainment. This was content. The senator's son challenged by a scholarship student. The wealthy elite confronted by someone who didn't belong in their world. "Are you recording this?" Someone whispered too loudly. "Every second," came the reply. A few students at the edges of the crowd whispered encouragement. "Stand your ground," one girl murmured. "Don't let them win," added another. But their voices remained low, unwilling to align themselves publicly against Tyler's influence. Most stayed silent, watching with the detached interest of spectators at a sporting event. This wasn't their fight. This wasn't their problem. They were just the audience. Tyler's face reddened, the flush spreading down his neck. Authority challenged was authority threatened. And Tyler Blackwood had never been threatened at Crestview Academy. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, charity case," he hissed, stepping closer until he was inches from Jamal's face. Jamal didn't step back, Uncle Marcus's voice steady in his mind. "Your stance tells your story." His story wasn't retreat. His story wasn't fear. Behind him, Lily's breathing steadied. She looked up at the boy defending her, a boy she'd seen in hallways, but never spoken to. A boy who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by standing between her and the untouchables of Crestview Academy. "Why?" she whispered. The question meant only for him. Jamal didn't turn, keeping his eyes on Tyler, but his answer reached her. "Because it's right." Tyler's fingers curled into fists. Marcus Chen and Brad Thornton moved to flank him, creating a wall of privilege and entitlement facing the solitary figure of Jamal Robinson. 3 against 1, Tyler smirked. Still feeling brave, scholarship? Jamal's expression didn't change. I'm not here to fight you. Too bad, Tyler replied, because we're definitely going to fight you. The courtyard held its collective breath. Phones recorded from every angle. History unfolding in high definition, ready to be shared, commented on, judged by those who weren't there. In that suspended moment, Jamal remembered his uncle's final lesson, whispered through pain, as cancer claimed him. The world will tell you that you're small, that you don't matter. But standing up when others sit down, that's how mountains are made, one stone at a time. Jamal was just one stone, but he would not be moved. Tyler's face contorted with rage. The courtyard had become an arena, and in his world, challenges demanded punishment. His right hand curled into a fist, knuckles whitening as he drew back and launched his attack, a wild, anger-fueled swing aimed directly at Jamal's face. But Jamal wasn't there. With a subtle shift of weight, Jamal pivoted slightly to the left. His right hand rose, not to strike, but to redirect. Palm open, he caught Tyler's forearm mid-swing, guiding the punch past his own shoulder with a gentle but firm pressure. The movement was fluid, almost beautiful, like water diverting around stone. Uncle Marcus's voice echoed in his mind. Let their anger become their weakness. Your calm is your strength. Tyler's momentum carried him forward, his balance compromised by the unexpected lack of resistance. He stumbled, crashing directly into Marcus Chen, who had been positioning himself to flank Jamal. Both boys tumbled to the ground in an ungraceful heap of designer clothes and wounded pride. The courtyard fell silent, then erupted in gasps and whispers. Did you see that? He didn't even hit him. Tyler missed completely. Brad Thornton's eyes widened in disbelief before narrowing with determination. While Tyler and Marcus struggled to untangle themselves, Brad charged forward like a linebacker, arms outstretched to tackle Jamal against the fountain. Jamal waited until the last possible moment. His feet shifted, establishing a solid base. As Brad reached him, Jamal rotated his torso, hands rising to Brad's shoulders, not pushing, but guiding. Using Brad's own momentum, Jamal simply helped him continue in the direction he was already moving. Brad's expression shifted from aggression to confusion as he found himself stumbling past Jamal, directly into the fountain with a spectacular splash. Water erupted skyward, raining down on nearby students who shrieked and jumped back. Brad surfaced, sputtering and drenched, his $300 shirt clinging to him like plastic wrap. Not once had Jamal thrown a punch. Not once had he initiated contact. Every move was defensive, controlled, precise, the physical embodiment of his uncle's teachings. That's not fighting, someone whispered loudly enough to be heard. That's art. The crowd's reaction transformed from bloodthirsty anticipation to something closer to awe. They had expected a brawl, wild swings, bloody noses, the chaotic violence of wounded male pride. Instead, they were witnessing something most had only seen in movies. Discipline over force, control over chaos, protection over destruction. From her wheelchair, Lily Carter watched in disbelief. For months, she had endured their taunts alone. For months, she had wheeled herself through Crestviews hallways with her head down, trying to be invisible. For months, she had cried silently in bathroom stalls between classes, wiping away tears, before returning to a world that either mocked her disability or pitied it. She had prayed for help. She had wished for intervention. She had even fantasized about her father suddenly appearing at school, using his wealth and power to make the bullying stop. But Daniel Carter remained buried in boardrooms and business deals, and her prayers seemed to dissolve into the same air that carried her tormentor's laughter. Yet here stood this boy, this scholarship student she'd barely noticed before today, defending her with a quiet strength that made her throat tighten with emotion. Memories flooded back, Tyler knocking books from her lap, pretending it was an accident. Marcus recording her struggles to navigate the school's single wheelchair ramp during rain. Brad mimicking her physical therapy exercises during lunch, earning cruel laughter from onlookers. Each humiliation had carved something from her, pieces of confidence, dignity, hope, until she felt hollowed out, a shell rolling through hallways. But watching Jamal stand firm, watching him defend without attacking, something stirred within her. A spark of the person she had been before the accident, before the wheelchair, before her mother's death, and her father's emotional abandonment. Her voice emerged, small at first, then growing. "Stop. Please stop." The words surprised her as much as anyone. She hadn't spoken above a whisper in public for months. "This is enough," she continued, her hands gripping her wheels to move forward. "Just leave us alone." But her words only seemed to inflame Tyler further as he finally disentangled himself from Marcus. His face was scarlet now, humiliation burning through any remaining restraint. The audience was watching. His reputation was at stake, his authority questioned. "You're dead," he hissed at Jamal, climbing to his feet. "Both of you." Tyler's gaze darted around frantically before landing on an abandoned lunch tray on a nearby table. He grabbed it, holding the hard plastic edge like a weapon. "Not so smooth now, are you?" Tyler snarled, circling Jamal with the tray raised. Jamal remained centered, his breathing steady. His eyes never left Tyler's, but he was acutely aware of his surroundings. The fountain behind him, Lily to his right, the crowd forming a loose circle around them, every detail registered with crystal clarity, just as Uncle Marcus had taught him. "You really want to do that on camera?" Jamal asked quietly, nodding slightly toward the forest of phones recording their every move. Tyler hesitated, his eyes flicking to the dozens of devices pointed in their direction. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face as reality penetrated his rage. Videos, evidence, consequences. His father's political career, college applications, permanent digital footprints. The tray lowered slightly. For a moment it seemed reason might prevail. The calculation was visible on Tyler's face, the weighing of satisfaction against consequence, immediate gratification against future cost. Then Marcus Chen's voice cut through the moment. "Don't be a coward, Tyler. He's just a scholarship case." Pride and rage overrode reason. With a guttural sound that was more animal than human, Tyler swung the tray in a wide arc, aimed at Jamal's head. Time seemed to slow. Jamal saw the attack coming, saw the trajectory, the speed, the intent. Uncle Marcus's final lesson played through his mind. The greatest victory isn't defeating your opponent. It's showing them another way. As the tray approached, Jamal's right hand shot up with precision. His fingers wrapped around Tyler's wrist. Not striking, not twisting, just catching, holding firm. The tray stopped inches from Jamal's face. The courtyard collectively held its breath. Tyler's expression morphed from rage to confusion to disbelief as he tried to pull his arm free. He couldn't. Jamal's grip was like iron, forged through years of training, strengthened by purpose rather than anger. Jamal stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Tyler could hear. I don't want to hurt you. Walk away. Let go of me, Tyler hissed, still struggling against Jamal's grip. I will, Jamal replied calmly. And then this ends. Now. Their eyes locked. Privilege meeting principle, entitlement facing discipline. For perhaps the first time in his life, Tyler Blackwood encountered something his family name couldn't intimidate, his wealth couldn't buy, his status couldn't override. After what felt like an eternity but was merely seconds, Jamal simply opened his hand, releasing Tyler's wrist. The sudden freedom caught Tyler off guard. He stumbled backward, the tray clattering to the ground. His balance failed him, and he fell onto his backside, looking up at Jamal with a mixture of hatred and something new, something that looked remarkably like fear. Not a single punch had been thrown by Jamal, not a single offensive move executed. Yet Tyler Blackwood, son of Senator Blackwood, terror of Crestview Academy, sat defeated on the courtyard ground. The silence was absolute. Even the birds seemed to pause their songs. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single pair of hands began to clap. Another joined, then another. The applause spread like ripples in water until it filled the courtyard. Not raucous cheering, but something more profound. Recognition. Acknowledgement of something extraordinary, witnessed. Jamal didn't acknowledge the applause. He turned away from Tyler, moving back to Lily's wheelchair. Are you okay? He asked, kneeling beside her, his voice gentle. Lily nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Not tears of fear or humiliation, but of something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me, Jamal replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through him. This is what people are supposed to do for each other. Behind them, Marcus helped Tyler to his feet. Brad climbed out of the fountain, water streaming from his clothes. All three boys backed away, their aura of invincibility shattered. The phones continued recording, capturing the aftermath of something that wasn't just a schoolyard confrontation, but a shifting of power. A reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the strongest force. And somewhere in the digital ether, those videos were already beginning their journey, from phone to phone, screen to screen, eventually reaching a penthouse office where a distracted father was about to receive the wake-up call of his life. The applause died instantly at the sharp click of heels against marble. Students parted like water as Mrs. Patricia Holbrook, Dean of Students, stormed into the courtyard. Her tailored blazer and pencil skirt were as impeccable as her reputation for maintaining Crestview Academy's prestigious order. Her eyes swept the scene with practiced efficiency. Lily Carter with tears streaming down her face, Tyler Blackwood on the ground, Jamal Robinson standing over him. The equation formed instantly in her mind, a calculation of power, privilege, and institutional preservation. Mr. Robinson. Her voice cracked like a whip across the courtyard. What have you done? The question wasn't a question at all, but an accusation wrapped in authority. Mrs. Holbrook had been at Crestview for 15 years, had attended countless fundraising galas, where Senator Blackwood wrote checks that funded the school's new performing arts center. She'd personally given tours to Marcus Chen's father before he donated the technology lab. She knew which families could make or break careers with a single phone call. And she knew which students were merely guests at the table of privilege. He didn't do anything wrong, someone shouted from the crowd. He was defending Lily, called another voice. Mrs. Holbrook raised a manicured hand for silence, her eyes never leaving Jamal. I can see perfectly well what happened here. But she couldn't, or wouldn't. The narrative had already formed in her mind. Scholarship student attacks donor's son. The threat to the institution was clear. The response protocol established. Protect the school's reputation. Protect the donor relationships. Protect the status quo. "Ma'am," Jamal began, his voice steady despite the injustice unfolding. "I was protecting Lily. I saw you standing over Tyler." Mrs. Holbrook cut him off sharply. "That's enough." Tyler seized the opportunity. Climbing to his feet with exaggerated effort, he clutched his wrist dramatically, wincing as though in terrible pain. "He attacked me," he said, his voice pitched to carry. "I was just talking to Lily, and he came out of nowhere." Brad, still dripping from his fountain bath, nodded vigorously. "It's true, Mrs. Holbrook. We were just hanging out, and Robinson went crazy." Marcus Chen stepped forward, his expensive phone conspicuously lowered now. He threatened Tyler first, then got violent. "We were trying to calm him down." The lies flowed easily, rehearsed in a lifetime of consequence-free existence. Their eyes never wavered. Their voices never trembled. They had never been held accountable, had never needed to fear the truth. Lily's hands gripped her wheelchair wheels, pushing herself forward. "That's not what happened." Her voice cracked with emotion. "They were bullying me. They pushed my chair toward the fountain. Jamal stopped them from hurting me." Mrs. Holbrook glanced at Lily, something like pity crossing her features. "Miss Carter, I understand you're upset, but I saw what I saw." "But you didn't see anything," Lily protested, her voice rising. "You just got here." "That's quite enough, Miss Carter." Mrs. Holbrook's tone chilled. "Mr. Robinson, come with me to my office immediately." Jamal stood perfectly still, the injustice washing over him like a familiar tide. His mother had warned him about this, how the world would see him differently, judge him differently, assume the worst, despite his best. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. Mrs. Holbrook gripped his arm firmly, as though he might flee. "The rest of you, return to class immediately. The bell rang 3 minutes ago." The crowd began to disperse, students casting backward glances, whispering behind hands. Some looked troubled, others entertained. Most simply relieved it wasn't them being marched to the office. Jamal walked with his head high, Uncle Marcus's voice steady in his mind. "Your dignity isn't given by others. It's held within you." Lily wheeled herself after them, her movements frantic. "Wait, please wait. He didn't do anything wrong. Why won't you listen?" Mrs. Holbrook didn't slow, didn't turn. "Miss Carter, return to class, or you'll be joining Mr. Robinson in detention." "I don't care," Lily shouted, her voice echoing across the now emptying courtyard. "This isn't fair." But fairness, Lily was learning, had little currency at Crestview Academy. Justice was a theory taught in social studies, not a practice applied in real life. Students streamed past them toward classroom buildings, eyes averted. No one spoke up. No one stepped forward. Tyler's family donated the library wing. Marcus's father was on the board of trustees. Brad's mother chaired the fundraising committee. These weren't just classmates. They were the children of the powerful, the connected, the essential. And in the calculus of institutional survival, Jamal Robinson was expendable. The courtyard emptied like a theater after a disturbing play, everyone eager to distance themselves from what they had witnessed. Everyone except one student, who remained seated on a bench, her dark eyes thoughtful behind wire-rimmed glasses. Maya Patel had never been part of the popular crowd. The daughter of Indian immigrants who had sacrificed everything for her education, she understood what it meant to be seen as other at Crestview. While her family had achieved financial success, Her father's software company had been acquired by Google 3 years ago. She remained apart from the social hierarchy, preferring the company of computers to classmates. Maya looked down at her phone, where the entire incident played in perfect high-definition video. Unlike the others who had lowered their phones when Mrs. Holbrook arrived, Maya had continued recording. Every lie, every accusation, every moment of injustice captured in digital clarity. She watched again as Mrs. Holbrook led Jamal away, his face composed despite the unfairness. She watched Lily's desperate attempts to intervene. She watched Tyler, Brad, and Marcus exchange smug glances when they thought no one was looking. Maya had spent 2 years at Crestview, being invisible. 2 years of watching similar scenes play out. Different characters, same story. The powerful protected, the vulnerable punished. She had never interfered, never involved herself. Self-preservation was easier than resistance. But something about today was different. Something about the quiet dignity in Jamal's stance. Something about the desperate pain in Lily's voice. Something about the casual cruelty of privilege unchecked. Her fingers moved across her phone screen with practiced efficiency. She trimmed the video to its essential narrative. The bullying, Jamal's intervention, his disciplined defense, the lies that followed. She added captions identifying each person, highlighting key moments. Then she opened Crestview's private social media platform, accessible only to students and faculty. Maya hesitated for just a moment, her finger hovering over the upload button. This would have consequences. This would make her visible. This would disrupt the carefully maintained order of Crestview Academy. She thought of her parents' sacrifices, their warnings to keep her head down, focus on academics, secure her future. Don't make waves, her father always said. Excel quietly. But she also thought of her mother's other teaching. Truth that stays silent becomes a lie. Maya took a deep breath and typed a caption. Justice or privilege? You decide. Crestwood Truth. She pressed upload. The video began processing immediately. Within seconds, it would appear on every Crestwood student's feed. Within minutes, it would reach faculty devices. By lunch, everyone would know. Maya stood gathering her books. She had just lit a match in a room full of carefully arranged paper structures. Now she would watch it burn. In Mrs. Holbrook's office, Jamal sat perfectly straight in the hard-backed chair across from her imposing desk. The walls were lined with framed photographs. Mrs. Holbrook with various celebrities and politicians who had visited Crestview, with donors at galas, with students who had gone on to Ivy League success. Not a single photo featured a student who looked like Jamal. This is very serious, Mr. Robinson, Mrs. Holbrook said, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. Violence of any kind is strictly prohibited at Crestview Academy. I understand, ma'am, Jamal replied, but I'm not interested in excuses, she cut him off. I saw you standing over Tyler Blackwood. 3 witnesses corroborated that you attacked him unprovoked. They were lying, Jamal said simply, not raising his voice. They were bullying Lily. I intervened to protect her. Mrs. Holbrook's expression hardened. Mr. Robinson, you are here on scholarship. Do you understand what that means? The question hung in the air, its implication clear. You are a guest. You are replaceable. You should be grateful. Yes, ma'am, Jamal answered. It means I earned my place here. A flash of surprise crossed Mrs. Holbrook's face before she composed herself. It means you are held to the highest standards of behavior. It means you represent not just yourself, but the scholarship program. It means... A sharp knock interrupted her speech. The door opened without waiting for response, and Principal Hammond entered, his face unusually pale. "Patricia," he said, his voice strained. "We need to talk. Now." Mrs. Holbrook frowned at the interruption. "I'm in the middle of a disciplinary meeting, Robert." Principal Hammond's eyes flicked to Jamal, then back to Mrs. Holbrook. "It's about this situation. There's a video." "A video?" Mrs. Holbrook's voice sharpened. "It's all over the school network. Every student has seen it. It shows everything." Mrs. Holbrook's expression froze. "What do you mean, everything?" "The bullying, the intervention, our response." Principal Hammond swallowed hard. "The school board is calling. Senator Blackwood's office, too. They want explanations." For the first time since he'd entered her office, Mrs. Holbrook looked directly at Jamal, really looked at him, not as a problem to be solved or a threat to be contained, but as a student who might have been wronged. "Wait here," she said, rising quickly. "Don't move." The adults stepped outside, closing the door behind them. Their urgent whispers leaked through the wood, fragments of panic reaching Jamal's ears. "Can't ignore this." "Damage control?" "Parents are calling." Jamal remained seated, his posture unchanged. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't even angry. Uncle Marcus had prepared him for this too. "The world isn't always fair," his uncle had told him, "but truth has a way of finding daylight. Your job isn't to force it into the open. Your job is to be ready when it arrives." Outside the office, truth was finding its way into every screen at Crestview Academy, and somewhere in that building, Maya Patel was walking to her next class, invisible no more. Maya Patel's video spread through Crestview Academy like wildfire through dry brush. Within 30 minutes, every student had seen it, huddled in bathroom stalls, sneaking glances under desks, passing phones during class changes. The footage was undeniable. Tyler and his friends tormenting Lily, Jamal's measured intervention, his disciplined defense, and finally, Mrs. Holbrook's biased response. By lunchtime, the video had escaped the confines of Crestview's private network. Someone had downloaded it, removed the school watermark, and uploaded it to Twitter with the caption, "Rich kids bully disabled girl. Black scholarship student defends her. Gets punished. #privilege. In action." The tweet accumulated 10,000 retweets in the first hour. TikTok users spliced the footage, adding commentary and outrage. Instagram accounts dedicated to social justice shared screenshots with lengthy captions about institutional racism and ableism. Local influencers amplified the story, tagging news outlets and celebrities known for their advocacy work. By afternoon, the hashtags had evolved and multiplied. #Defend Lily trended in the city. #Justice for Jamal gained traction nationally. #Crestwood Truth became a rallying cry for students sharing their own experiences of unchecked privilege at elite schools across the country. By evening, Channel 7 News had dispatched a van to park outside Crestview's ornate gates. Viral video raises questions about elite academy's discipline policies, the anchor announced over footage of Crestview's imposing facade. Sources tell us the student who intervened to protect a disabled classmate from bullies has been suspended, while the alleged bullies face no consequences. Inside the school, the digital wildfire had ignited a real one. Principal Robert Hammond sat behind his mahogany desk, loosening his tie as sweat beaded on his forehead. The air conditioning hummed efficiently, but couldn't cool the heat of the crisis unfolding around him. On his computer screen, the video played for the 5th time, each viewing more damning than the last. "This is a disaster," he muttered, rubbing his temples. Mrs. Holbrook stood rigidly by the window, her earlier certainty crumbling under the weight of digital evidence. "We need to get ahead of this, Robert." "Ahead of it?" Hammond's laugh was hollow. "It's already viral. Senator Blackwood has called 3 times. He's threatening to sue the school for defamation." "On what grounds?" Mrs. Holbrook asked. "The video clearly shows Tyler." "It doesn't matter what it shows," Hammond snapped. "Do you understand who we're dealing with? The Blackwoods donated $2 million for the East Wing renovation. Marcus Chen's father sits on the board. The Thorntons endowed 3 faculty chairs." He gestured helplessly at his phone, which hadn't stopped buzzing with notifications. "And now they're all threatening to pull funding if we don't, quote, handle this situation appropriately." "But the video can be interpreted many ways," Hammond finished firmly. "Robinson clearly put hands on Tyler. That's a violation of our zero-tolerance policy on physical contact." Mrs. Holbrook frowned, but he was defending Lily Carter. "That's his version," Hammond replied, straightening his tie as he regained composure. "We have a clear protocol here. Any student involved in a physical altercation is suspended pending investigation. Robinson was involved. He's suspended." "And the others?" Hammond's expression hardened. "We'll review their conduct separately." A knock at the door interrupted them. Hammond's secretary poked her head in. "Ms. Robinson is here." Hammond nodded, squaring his shoulders. "Send her in." Keisha Robinson still wore her hospital scrubs. The blue fabric wrinkled from a 12-hour shift. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hair was hastily pulled back. She had rushed from the pediatric ward the moment she received the call, leaving in the middle of her shift. Something she had never done before. Something that could jeopardize the job that barely kept their bills paid. Jamal stood as his mother entered, his heart twisting at her exhausted appearance. She shouldn't be here. She should be helping sick children, then going home to rest. Instead, she was walking into another battle, another system stacked against them. "Ms. Robinson," Principal Hammond began, not rising from his seat. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Keisha nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "What happened?" Hammond gestured to the chair beside Jamal. "Please, sit." As Keisha lowered herself into the chair, Hammond launched into his prepared narrative. "There was an altercation in the courtyard today, involving your son and several other students. Our zero-tolerance policy requires—" "What kind of altercation?" Keisha interrupted, her voice steady despite her fatigue. Hammond's smile tightened. Jamal put his hands on another student, specifically Tyler Blackwood. "Why?" The single word carried the weight of a mother who knew her child, who had raised him with values and principles. "That's not relevant to our policy," Hammond replied. "Physical contact of any kind. It's completely relevant." Keisha cut in again. "Context matters. Why did my son put his hands on this boy?" Hammond's jaw tightened. "Ms. Robinson, I understand you're upset, but Crestview Academy has clear protocols. I asked a simple question," Keisha said, her voice gaining strength. "Why did Jamal touch this other student?" Jamal watched his mother with quiet pride. 12-hour shift, single parent, bills piling up at home, and still she sat straight-backed before this man in his expensive suit, refusing to be dismissed. Hammond sighed. "According to your son, he was defending another student." "Lily Carter," Jamal added. "They were bullying her, pushing her wheelchair toward the fountain." Hammond shot Jamal a warning look. "That's one perspective." "And the other perspective?" Keisha asked. "Tyler Blackwood and his friends claim Jamal attacked them unprovoked." Keisha's eyes narrowed. And you believe them over my son because... The unspoken accusation hung in the air between them. Hammond shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Robinson, this isn't about who we believe. It's about policy. Jamal was involved in a physical incident. Our protocol mandates suspension pending investigation. May I see this incident? Keisha asked. Hammond hesitated. I don't think that's necessary at this stage. There's a video, isn't there? The secretary mentioned something about a video going viral. Hammond's expression soured. There is footage circulating, yes, but it's been edited and shared without context. Show me, Keisha demanded. After a moment's hesitation, Hammond turned his computer screen toward her. The video played, Maya's careful edit showing the full sequence of events in crystal clarity. Keisha watched in silence, her face revealing nothing. When it ended, she turned to her son. Is that what happened? Jamal nodded. Yes, ma'am. She turned back to Hammond, new steel in her voice. My son defended a disabled girl from bullies. He used minimal force. He protected someone who needed protection. Her eyes flashed. And you're suspending him for it? Ms. Robinson, Hammond began, his tone patronizing. We have zero tolerance for... For what? Keisha interrupted. For courage? For standing up against cruelty? For doing what every adult in this building failed to do? Hammond's face flushed. For violence, he finished firmly. The door opened, and Lily wheeled herself in, her father's administrative assistant trailing behind her. You can't go in there, the woman protested. The principal is in a meeting. I don't care, Lily said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. This is about me. I deserve to be heard. Hammond rose, his patience clearly fraying. Miss Carter, this is highly inappropriate. No, Lily countered, wheeling herself fully into the office. What's inappropriate is punishing someone for helping me while letting my bullies walk free. Miss Carter? Hammond's voice took on the practiced tone of adult to difficult child. I understand you're upset, but we have zero tolerance for violence. Where was your zero tolerance when Tyler kicked my wheelchair? Lily demanded. Where was it when they recorded me struggling on the ramp in the rain? Where was it every single day they made my life hell? That's quite enough, Hammond said sharply. Those are different matters entirely. No, they're not. Lily's voice rose. They're exactly the same. You just didn't care until someone stood up to them. Hammond's expression hardened. We have zero tolerance for violence, Miss Carter. Not for hurt feelings. Lily recoiled as if slapped. Keisha's eyes widened at the callousness. My decision stands, Hammond continued, turning back to Keisha. Jamal is suspended for 3 days, pending further investigation. If you'd like to appeal, you can submit a written request to the disciplinary committee. Keisha stood slowly, dignity in every movement. My son did the right thing. I won't apologize for raising him to protect others. Hammond's smile didn't reach his eyes. Noble sentiments, Ms. Robinson, but rules are rules. Jamal rose beside his mother, his face composed, despite the injustice burning in his chest. 3 days of missed classes, 3 days of falling behind, 3 days that could jeopardize the scholarship he had worked so hard to earn. As they turned to leave, Lily caught Jamal's eye. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be, he replied quietly. I'd do it again. The hallways should have been empty during fifth period. Instead, a crowd had gathered around the main corridor's digital bulletin board, the massive smart board, usually displaying announcements and upcoming events. Today, it showed something very different. Maya Patel stood to the side, her laptop connected to the display system. On the screen, The courtyard confrontation played in high definition, every moment visible to the gathered students. The timestamp in the corner proved it hadn't been edited or manipulated. "Watch again," Maya said, her voice carrying unexpected authority. "Who attacks first? Who defends? Who lies?" The crowd grew as more students slipped from classrooms, drawn by urgent texts and whispers. Teachers followed, initially intending to herd students back to class, then stopping to watch the footage themselves. The evidence was undeniable. Tyler swung first. Jamal only defended. Mrs. Holbrook ignored witnesses. The system protected the privileged and punished the protector. As the video ended, silence hung in the air. Then, from somewhere in the back of the crowd, a voice called out, "Justice!" Another joined, "Justice!" The chant spread, growing louder with each repetition. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" Students began marching down the hallways, the chant echoing off marble floors and wood-paneled walls. They passed the administrative offices, voices raised in unified demand. "Justice! Justice!" Inside his office, Principal Hammond's phone exploded with notifications. Parents calling, board members texting, local news requesting comments. The school's social media accounts flooded with outraged messages. His secretary burst in, without knocking. "Sir, the school board chair is on line 1. She says it's an emergency." Hammond reached for the phone with trembling fingers, as the chants grew louder outside his door. "Justice, justice, justice!" The carefully maintained order of Crestview Academy was crumbling, and somewhere in the city, a video of a quiet boy defending a girl in a wheelchair was making its way toward the penthouse office of a distracted billionaire father who was about to receive the wake-up call of his life. Daniel Carter stood at the edge of his empire, hands clasped behind his back as he gazed through floor-to-ceiling windows at the city sprawled beneath him. 42 stories high. The penthouse office of Carter Technologies offered views that real estate agents described as breathtaking and unparalleled. From here, the city looked like a model, perfect, contained, controllable. Daniel preferred it this way, distant, manageable, theoretical. At 42, he had built what industry publications called the most innovative tech ecosystem of the decade. Self-made, ruthlessly intelligent, and unfailingly strategic. Daniel had transformed a garage startup into a multi-billion-dollar corporation through sheer force of will and an almost supernatural ability to predict market shifts. Behind him, 5 men in suits worth more than most people's cars waited patiently at the conference table. Holographic projections hovered above the polished surface. Charts, graphs, projections all pointing upward. The Midas merger, they called it. $200 million. 3 years of negotiations. The final meeting before signatures. As I was saying, Daniel continued, turning back to face them. The integration of our AI systems with your manufacturing infrastructure creates unprecedented efficiencies. Conservative estimates put first-year returns at 30% above current projections. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Again. 4th time in 20 minutes. Daniel ignored it. He always did during meetings. His assistant knew the protocol. No interruptions, unless the building was literally on fire. Mr. Zhao's team in Singapore has already begun preliminary coding, Daniel continued, swiping through projections with practiced precision. By 3rd quarter, we'll have... The conference room door opened. Every head turned. Melissa Park, Daniel's executive assistant for 7 years, stood in the doorway. Her face, normally composed to corporate perfection, showed something Daniel hadn't seen since the night she'd had to tell him about Catherine's accident. fear. "Sir," she said, her voice steady despite her expression, "I need to speak with you immediately." Daniel felt irritation rise. "Melissa, we're in the middle of—" "It's about Lily, sir." 2 words. That's all it took for Daniel Carter's carefully constructed world to freeze. The name he both treasured and avoided. The responsibility he both cherished and fled from. The guilt that never quite disappeared, no matter how many floors he put between himself and the ground. "Gentlemen," Daniel said, not looking at the investors. "Excuse me for a moment." He followed Melissa into the hallway, the door closing behind them, with an expensive whisper. What happened? The question emerged more sharply than he intended. Melissa held out her tablet. "This video is going viral, sir. It was taken at Crestview Academy today." Daniel took the tablet, heart hammering against his ribs. "Is she hurt? Was there an accident?" "Just watch, sir." The video began to play. Courtyard, students, Lily in her wheelchair, trying to navigate through a group of boys, one kicking her wheel, another mimicking her movements. Laughter, phones recording. Daniel's blood turned to ice. His daughter, his little girl, humiliated, endangered, terrified. Then a boy appeared, tall, composed, moving with purpose, standing between Lily and her tormentors, defending her when no one else would. "Who is that?" Daniel asked, voice barely audible. "Jamal Robinson," Melissa replied. "Scholarship student. According to social media, he's been suspended for fighting, while the bullies received no punishment." Daniel's hand tightened on the tablet. "Get them back in the conference room. Project this." Melissa hesitated. "Sir, the merger—" "Now." Moments later, the video played on the massive conference screen. The investors shifted uncomfortably as they watched. Daniel stood motionless, absorbing every detail. Lily's face as she was mocked. The boy, Jamal, standing up for her with quiet dignity. The administrator arriving, blaming the wrong person. His daughter's desperate attempts to speak truth, to power. His daughter. When had he last truly seen her? When had he last listened to her? The room seemed to spin around him as the video ended. The investors exchanged glances, unsure how to proceed. Daniel, Vernon Hayes, lead investor, ventured carefully. "Perhaps we should reschedule." "No," Daniel replied, his voice distant even to his own ears. No rescheduling. The memory crashed through him like a physical force, the night that had divided his life into before and after. 3 years ago, rain-slicked roads, Catherine driving, Lily in the back seat, the call that shattered everything. Accident, hospital, hurry. By the time he arrived, Catherine was gone. His brilliant, beautiful wife, who balanced his ambition with compassion, who reminded him what mattered when he forgot. Gone in an instant. And Lily, broken, unconscious, surrounded by machines and doctors speaking in hushed, urgent tones about spinal damage and permanent paralysis. He had held his daughter's hand through surgeries and diagnoses, had promised her and himself that he would be there, would help her rebuild, would never leave her side. For 3 weeks. Then the company began to falter without his direction. Investors grew nervous. Competitors circled. And Daniel had made the first of many compromises. Just a few hours at the office. Just one important meeting. Just until things stabilized. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Lily's physical therapy appointments were scheduled around his meetings, then rescheduled, then attended by hired caregivers. Her questions: when would he be home? Could he help with homework? Would he attend her adapted piano recital? met with the same answer. Daddy has to work, sweetheart, but I'll make it up to you. He had buried his grief in spreadsheets, his guilt in acquisitions, his responsibility in empire building, and while he constructed towers of glass and steel, his daughter faced cruelty, alone. Daniel looked at the frozen image on the screen, Jamal standing between Lily and danger, unflinching. "Gentlemen," Daniel said, his voice finding new resolve, "this meeting is over." Vernon Hayes blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry?" "The meeting, the merger, it's over." The investors exchanged alarmed glances. 3 years of work, $200 million, countless hours of negotiation. "Daniel," Vernon began carefully, "I understand you're upset about your daughter, but surely we can—" "You don't understand," Daniel interrupted, already gathering his things. "And until 10 minutes ago, neither did I." He straightened, looking each investor in the eye. "For 3 years, I've convinced myself that all this—" He gestured to the office, the views, the projections still hovering above the table, "was for her, that I was building a legacy to protect her future." His voice caught. "But I wasn't protecting anything that matters." "The deal," another investor began. "Some things matter more than deals," Daniel said simply. He pressed a button on the conference table. "Melissa, cancel everything on my schedule, indefinitely, and call my driver. I'm going to Crestview Academy." The investors sat in stunned silence as Daniel Carter, the man Forbes had called pathologically incapable of walking away from a deal, walked out of the biggest merger of his career without a backward glance. In the back of his custom Bentley, Daniel watched the video again and again. Each viewing revealed new details he had missed. The slight tremor in Lily's hands as she gripped her wheelchair, the resigned set of her shoulders, suggesting this wasn't the first time she had endured such treatment. The way she looked up at Jamal with surprise, not just that someone had defended her, but that anyone had noticed her suffering at all. When had he last noticed? When had he last really seen his daughter? Tears streamed down Daniel's face, unchecked. He who prided himself on emotional control in boardrooms and negotiations, who had not cried since Catherine's funeral, wept openly as the city blurred past his window. His driver, Jenkins, kept his eyes carefully on the road, offering his employer the privacy of his grief. "How long?" Daniel asked suddenly. Jenkins glanced in the rear-view mirror. "Sir? How long has Lily been bullied? Did you know?" Jenkins hesitated, weighing honesty against employment. "I believe it's been ongoing, sir. Miss Lily doesn't speak of it, but there have been signs." "Signs I missed," Daniel said, the words heavy with realization. "You've been very busy, sir." "That's not an excuse," Daniel replied, wiping his eyes. "That's the problem." He stared at the frozen image of Jamal Robinson, a boy he had never met, whose family he didn't know, whose life was completely separate from the rarefied world of Carter Technologies. A boy who had shown more courage in 5 minutes than Daniel had demonstrated in 3 years. Wealth had built Daniel's towers, funded his daughter's medical care, paid for the best schools and therapists and accommodations. But it hadn't protected her from cruelty. It hadn't given her the one thing she truly needed, someone who would stand beside her when the world turned hostile. "Faster, Jenkins," Daniel said, a new urgency in his voice. "I need to get to my daughter." As the car accelerated, Daniel made a silent promise, not just to Lily, but to himself and to Catherine's memory. This time would be different. This time, He wouldn't retreat to boardrooms and balance sheets. This time, he would be the father his daughter deserved, the father who should have been there all along. The Bentley's tires crunched on Crestview Academy's immaculate circular driveway, coming to a stop beneath the portico's marble columns. Students passing between classes froze at the sight of the vehicle, not because luxury cars were unusual at Crestview, but because this particular car belonged to Daniel Carter. His daughter arrived in it each morning, but the man himself was a ghost, a name on donation plaques and buildings, never physically present. Daniel didn't wait for Jenkins to open his door. He stepped out, his bespoke suit and commanding presence drawing every eye in the vicinity. 6'2", with the lean physique of someone who scheduled workouts with the same precision as board meetings, he moved with the focused intensity of a man accustomed to bending the world to his will. The heavy oak doors of Crestview's main entrance swung open under his hands. The administrative office lay just beyond the foyer, a space designed to impress parents and intimidate students in equal measure. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings. Oil paintings of former headmasters lined walls paneled in rich mahogany. Persian rugs muffled footsteps on marble floors. The secretary at the front desk looked up, her practiced smile freezing as recognition dawned. "Mr. Carter," she managed, rising quickly. "We weren't expecting—" "Where is Principal Hammond?" Daniel's voice was quiet, but carried the unmistakable tone of a man who didn't repeat himself. "He's in a meeting, but I can interrupt it." The secretary hesitated, caught between protocols and the reality of who stood before her. Daniel Carter's name was etched into the science building's facade. His foundation funded the technology lab where her son took coding classes. "Of course," she said, reaching for her phone. "May I tell him what this is regarding?" Daniel's gaze was steel. He knows. Behind her, a second secretary was already typing frantically on her phone, undoubtedly alerting the entire administrative staff that Daniel Carter, tech titan, billionaire, and notoriously absent parent, had materialized in their lobby looking like the human embodiment of a thunderstorm. "Where is my daughter?" Daniel asked, while the first secretary murmured urgently into her phone. "I believe she's in the library for her study period," the second secretary offered. Daniel nodded once, then turned toward the principal's office without waiting for permission or escort. "Mr. Carter, you can't just—" the secretary began, but he was already moving down the hallway, his footsteps echoing with purpose. He didn't knock. The heavy door swung open under his hand, revealing Principal Hammond mid-sentence with two board members. All three men looked up, startled by the interruption. "Daniel." Hammond recovered quickly, rising from his seat with a practiced smile. "What an unexpected pleasure. We were just discussing the unfortunate incident from this morning." "Good," Daniel replied, closing the door behind him. "Then you're prepared for this conversation." The tension in the room thickened instantly. The board members, both wealthy alumni whose children had graduated years ago, exchanged glances. "Perhaps we should continue this later, Robert," one suggested, already gathering his things. Hammond nodded gratefully. "Yes, thank you, gentlemen. We'll reconvene after lunch." Daniel stood silently as the men filed out, offering him deferential nods as they passed. When the door closed, leaving him alone with Hammond, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Please, sit." Hammond gestured to the now vacant chairs. "Would you like coffee? Water?" "I want a full account of what happened to my daughter today," Daniel said, remaining standing. "Every detail." Hammond's smile tightened. "Of course." There was an unfortunate altercation in the courtyard. Some students were engaged in overly enthusiastic horseplay. Another student intervened rather aggressively. We've addressed the situation according to our protocols. Horseplay, Daniel repeated, the word like ice. Is that what you call 3 boys bullying a girl in a wheelchair? Hammond cleared his throat. The situation was more nuanced than what you may have seen in that video, Daniel. Context is important in these matters. Show me the video. All of it. Daniel's voice left no room for refusal. Hammond hesitated, then sighed. Very well. He turned to his computer, pulled up a file, and swiveled the monitor toward Daniel. This is the complete footage from our security cameras. As you'll see. Daniel held up his hand for silence as the video began to play. The courtyard from a higher angle, Lily wheeling herself through the lunch crowd, Tyler, Marcus, and Brad intercepting her, the taunting, the kick to her wheel, the crowd forming, Jamal rising from his table, approaching with calm purpose, the confrontation, Tyler's first swing, Jamal's disciplined defense, the fountain incident, the lunch tray, Mrs. Holbrook's arrival and immediate blame assignment. Every second burned into Daniel's consciousness. His jaw tightened until a muscle jumped visibly along his temple. When the video ended, the silence in the office was absolute. You suspended the boy who saved my daughter? Daniel finally asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Hammond shifted in his chair. We have a zero-tolerance policy for physical altercations, Daniel. Jamal Robinson put his hands on another student. To protect my daughter from bullies. Nevertheless, protocols must be followed. Tyler Blackwood's father is a United States Senator. Marcus Chen's family. I know exactly who their families are. Daniel cut him off. What I don't understand is why that matters more than what they did. Hammond steepled his fingers. Daniel, surely you understand the delicate position we're in. These families are pillars of our community, major supporters of... I've donated $5 million to this institution. Daniel interrupted, his quiet fury more terrifying than any shouting could have been. For what? So bullies can torment my child, while administrators look the other way? Hammond paled slightly. That's not a fair characterization of what's not fair, Daniel continued, leaning forward to place his palms flat on Hammond's desk, is that my daughter has been suffering while I wrote checks, believing I was securing her safety and education. Hammond swallowed visibly. We take all student concerns seriously, Daniel. There are procedures, investigations. Here's a procedure. Daniel straightened to his full height. Reinstate Jamal Robinson immediately. Issue a formal apology to him and his mother. Implement appropriate disciplinary measures against the actual perpetrators. Do it today. Hammond's eyes widened. Daniel, we can't simply... Or, Daniel continued, as if Hammond hadn't spoken. I withdraw every cent of funding, effective immediately. I remove my daughter from this school, and I make absolutely certain that every news outlet knows exactly why. The threat hung in the air between them. Hammond's face cycled through several emotions: disbelief, calculation, resignation. The board would need to... The board, Daniel said with deadly precision, will do whatever is necessary to prevent the largest donor in Crestview's history from publicly denouncing this institution. We both know that. Hammond's shoulders sagged slightly. What exactly are you asking for? Justice, Daniel replied simply. For my daughter, for Jamal Robinson, for every student who has been silenced by this system. Hammond nodded slowly, defeat evident in his posture. I'll make the calls. Now, Daniel added, while I'm here. As Hammond reached for his phone, Daniel turned toward the door. Where is the library? East wing, second floor, Hammond replied, already dialing. But Daniel... The door closed behind him. Daniel found Lily not in the library, but in an empty classroom. She sat alone by the window, her wheelchair positioned to catch the afternoon sunlight, a book open on her lap. She wasn't reading. Her gaze was fixed on the courtyard below, where everything had happened just hours earlier. He paused in the doorway, suddenly uncertain. When had he last seen her in daylight? Their interactions had become so scheduled, so abbreviated. Breakfast meetings where he checked emails while asking perfunctory questions about school. Brief goodnights when he returned home after she was already in bed. He had convinced himself that providing for her material needs was enough, that his physical absence was justified by the empire he built for her future. Looking at her now, small, alone, resilient despite everything, he realized how completely he had failed her. "Lily," he said softly. She turned, surprise washing over her face. "Dad, you're here?" The question contained volumes, not just surprise at his physical presence, but genuine shock that he had left his office, his meetings, his carefully constructed world to come to her. "I'm here, sweetheart," he said, crossing the room to kneel beside her wheelchair. "I'm so sorry I wasn't before." Confusion clouded her features. "Did the school call you about what happened?" "No," he admitted. "I saw the video. Online." "Oh." Her eyes dropped to her hands, folded in her lap. "It's not a big deal. It happens all the time." The casual admission struck Daniel like a physical blow. All the time. His daughter, bullied and humiliated regularly, and he hadn't known, hadn't asked, hadn't seen. "Lily," he said, taking her hands in his, "it is a big deal, and I need you to tell me everything." She looked up, searching his face for something, sincerity perhaps, or the attention she had craved for so long. Whatever she saw there opened a dam within her. "They hate me," she began, words tumbling out after months of silence. "Not just Tyler and his friends, lots of them. They call me Wheel Girl and Daddy's broken doll. They ask if your money couldn't buy me new legs. They take videos when I struggle with doors or ramps and share them in group chats." Daniel listened, each word a knife to his heart. "The teachers see, but they don't do anything. Mrs. Holbrook told me I need to develop thicker skin if I want to succeed in the real world. The counselor said I should try to fit in better." Tears welled in her eyes. "I eat lunch alone most days. I pretend I need to study, but really, it's just easier than trying to find someone who will let me sit with them." "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel asked, his voice breaking. Lily's laugh was hollow beyond her years. "When, Dad? During our 5-minute breakfasts, between your calls. You're always so busy, always working, always gone." The truth of it hung between them. His physical presence in their home had become as much a ghost as Catherine's. "And today?" he prompted gently. "Tell me about today." "Tyler was worse than usual," she said, wiping her eyes. "They surrounded me in the courtyard, kicked my wheel, said they wanted to see if my chair had turbo mode. Everyone was watching, recording. No one helped. And then..." "Jamal," Daniel supplied. Lily nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. "He just appeared. Calm, strong. He didn't yell or threaten. He just stood between me and them. Like it was the most natural thing in the world." "He was brave," Daniel said. "He was kind," Lily corrected. "That's rarer." Another knife to Daniel's heart. His daughter, wise beyond her years, from pain he should have protected her from. And now he's suspended, she continued, anger replacing sadness, for helping me, while Tyler and his friends get nothing. It's not fair, Dad. It's not right. No, Daniel agreed. It's not. But it's being fixed right now. Lily looked skeptical. How? Because I'm here now, he said. The words a promise to them both. And I'm not going anywhere. He opened his arms, and Lily hesitated only a moment before leaning forward into his embrace. Daniel held his daughter, really held her, for the first time in months. Years, maybe. He felt her shoulders shake as she finally released the tears she had been holding back for so long. I miss Mom, she whispered against his shoulder. I know, sweetheart, he replied, his own tears falling freely. I do too. And I've been trying to outrun that pain for so long that I forgot what matters most. He pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. Catherine's eyes, he realized with a pang. But that ends today, I promise you. For the first time in 3 years, Daniel Carter wasn't thinking about markets or mergers, acquisitions or assets. He was fully present, holding his daughter, feeling the weight of all he had missed and all he needed to make right. Outside the classroom, Crestview Academy continued its carefully choreographed dance of privilege and power. But inside this room, something fundamental had shifted. A father had finally arrived, not just physically, but completely, and he wasn't leaving again. Morning sunlight streamed through the high windows of Crestview Academy's grand auditorium, illuminating dust motes that danced above the gathering crowd. Students filed in with unusual solemnity, their typical between-class chatter reduced to whispers. The emergency assembly, announced via text message to all parents and students the previous evening, had transformed the normal school day into something unprecedented. In the front rows, parents sat stiffly in their designer suits and carefully coordinated outfits. Senator Blackwood occupied an aisle seat, his face a practiced mask of neutrality that had served him through countless political storms. Beside him, Mrs. Blackwood clutched her handbag with white knuckles. The Chens sat 3 seats down, Mr. Chen periodically checking his phone, despite the "devices off" announcement. The Thorntons completed the trio of powerful families, Mr. Thornton's real estate empire, having quite literally shaped the city's skyline. Behind the heavy auditorium doors, local news vans lined the circular driveway. Daniel Carter had personally called several station managers the previous evening. If you want an exclusive on how elite private schools handle bullying, privilege, and accountability, be at Crestview Academy tomorrow morning. The media had descended like wolves to a feast. In the front row, directly across from the powerful families, sat Jamal Robinson and his mother. Keisha had taken another day off work, something that would strain their budget for months, wearing her one good dress, pressed carefully the night before. Her hand rested protectively on Jamal's shoulder. They had received the call reinstating him just hours earlier, with Principal Hammond's strained voice offering transportation to this morning's assembly if needed. We'll manage, Keisha had replied coolly. Beside them sat Lily, her wheelchair positioned at the end of the row. For the first time in months, she didn't hunch her shoulders or try to make herself smaller. Her father stood beside her, one hand resting gently on her chair. Daniel Carter had not left his daughter's side since finding her in that empty classroom. They had talked through dinner, through the evening, through tears and revelations and promises. He had slept on the couch in her room, unwilling to be separated even by walls. The auditorium fell silent as Principal Hammond walked to the podium, his usual confident stride replaced by something more measured. Behind him, the Board of Trustees filed onto the stage, taking seats in a solemn row. "Good morning," Hammond began, his voice amplified through the sound system. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. Yesterday, an incident occurred on our campus that has prompted serious reflection about our values as an institution." He paused, scanning the audience. "A full investigation has been conducted, including review of video evidence and witness statements. The findings are unambiguous." The screen behind him illuminated with the now familiar courtyard footage, Maya Patel's careful edit showing the full sequence of events in high definition. This video clearly shows Tyler Blackwood, Marcus Chen, and Brad Thornton engaged in deliberate bullying of Lily Carter. Hammond's voice had found new resolve. It shows Jamal Robinson intervening to protect her, using minimal force and remarkable restraint when physically threatened himself. The footage played in full, the auditorium completely silent, except for occasional gasps at particularly damning moments. When it ended, Hammond continued, "In light of this evidence, Jamal Robinson's suspension has been rescinded with immediate effect, and a formal apology extended to him and his family. His transcript will reflect no disciplinary action." Keisha squeezed her son's shoulder, tears welling in her eyes. "Additionally," Hammond continued, "Tyler Blackwood, Marcus Chen, and Brad Thornton will now come to the stage." A murmur rippled through the audience as the three boys rose reluctantly from their seats. Their parents' expressions ranged from tight-lipped anger to genuine shame as their sons walked the long aisle to the stage. "These students will now offer public apologies to those they have harmed," Hammond stated, stepping aside from the podium. Tyler approached first, his usual swagger absent. His eyes remained fixed on the floor as he leaned toward the microphone. "I'm sorry for what happened yesterday," he mumbled, the words barely audible despite the sound system. "It won't happen again." The apology hung in the air, hollow and insufficient. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Marcus and Brad followed with equally perfunctory statements, clearly rehearsed and devoid of genuine remorse. As Brad stepped back from the microphone, an unexpected movement caught everyone's attention. Lily had wheeled herself forward, approaching the base of the stage. Daniel moved to follow, but stopped himself, recognizing something in his daughter's posture, a determination that needed no protection. "Is that all you have to say?" Lily's voice carried through the auditorium without need of amplification. "You made me feel worthless every day, not just yesterday. Every single day." Tyler's eyes remained fixed on his designer sneakers. Marcus stared at a point somewhere above the audience's heads. Brad at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "You recorded me struggling on the ramp when it rained," Lily continued, her voice growing stronger. "You knocked books from my lap and laughed when I couldn't reach them. You asked if my father's money couldn't buy me new legs." The auditorium was utterly still. Collective breath held. "And it wasn't just me," Lily added. "I've seen what you do to others, the names you call them, the way you make sure everyone knows who belongs and who doesn't." Tyler finally looked up, meeting her gaze briefly before looking away again. No words came, no further apology offered. The silence stretched, tense and expectant. Then, from the front row, Jamal Robinson stood. All eyes turned to him as he walked slowly to stand beside Lily. He hadn't planned to speak, had in fact promised his mother he would keep his head down, accept the reinstatement, and focus on his education. But something in Lily's courage, in the inadequacy of the moment, called for more. "Don't just apologize to us," Jamal said, his voice clear and steady as he addressed the three boys directly. Then he turned to face the student body, his gaze sweeping across hundreds of faces. Some he recognized, most he didn't. Fellow scholarship students, athletes, academic stars, social butterflies, wallflowers, the entire ecosystem of Crestview Academy. Apologize to everyone you made feel small, he continued. Everyone you hurt when no cameras were watching. Everyone who ate lunch alone because they were afraid. Everyone who changed their clothes, their accent, their interests trying to avoid your attention. The words resonated through the space like a bell being struck. Clear, true, undeniable. We all saw what happened in that video, Jamal said. But what we didn't see were all the times before, all the small cruelties that weren't recorded, all the moments when looking away was easier than standing up. He paused, his uncle's teachings flowing through him. My uncle taught me that real strength isn't about power over others. It's about standing beside those who need you. It's about recognizing that we're all worthy of dignity, regardless of what we have or where we come from. Something shifted in the auditorium, an almost physical change in the atmosphere. A student in the middle section stood suddenly, tears streaming down her face. They cyberbullied me last year, she called out. Created a fake profile with my pictures. I had to change schools and came back this semester. Another student rose, 2 rows back. They locked me in the equipment shed during gym because I couldn't afford the right shoes. One by one, students began to stand, each with a story, each finding courage in collective truth. A boy who was mocked for his accent. A girl whose lunch was thrown away daily. A freshman whose artwork was destroyed because he dared win a competition Tyler had entered. The stories poured forth, years of silence breaking like a dam. Some students cried as they spoke. Others shook with anger or relief. The collective testimony painted a picture of systematic cruelty that had been allowed to flourish beneath Crestview's polished surface. On stage, the transformation in the 3 bullies was remarkable. Tyler's face had lost all color. Marcus stared at the floor, genuine shame replacing his earlier indifference. Brad openly wept, his shoulders shaking as the magnitude of their actions became impossible to deny. Behind them, their parents' expressions shifted from embarrassment to horror as the full extent of their son's behavior was laid bare. Senator Blackwood's political mask cracked, revealing the face of a father confronting his child's true character. Mrs. Chen pressed a hand to her mouth. Mr. Thornton's jaw worked silently, as if searching for words that wouldn't come. The testimonies continued for nearly 20 minutes, each story adding weight to the reckoning. When the last student sat down, the auditorium fell silent again. Not the tense silence of before, but something cleansed, something honest. Principal Hammond returned to the podium, visibly moved. "Thank you," he said simply, "for your courage, for your truth." He straightened his shoulders. What we've heard today demands more than individual apologies. It demands systemic change. Hammond outlined the new policies that would take effect immediately. An anonymous reporting system for bullying incidents. Mandatory counseling for both victims and perpetrators. Regular community forums where students could speak freely about their experiences. Most significantly, a reformed disciplinary approach that would be applied equally, regardless of family status or donation history. Zero tolerance will now mean exactly that, Hammond stated firmly. Not zero tolerance except for certain families. Not zero tolerance unless there are mitigating circumstances of privilege. Zero tolerance, period. He turned to address the board directly. I recognize that these changes may impact donations. Some families may choose to withdraw their financial support. If that is the cost of creating a truly safe and equitable environment for all our students, then it is a price worth paying. Daniel Carter stepped forward then, joining Lily and Jamal at the base of the stage. Crestview Academy will not suffer financially for doing the right thing, he announced. The Carter Foundation will establish an endowment specifically to support these new initiatives and to ensure that no student's well-being is ever compromised by financial considerations. A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. Daniel Carter, notoriously absent from school functions, was now publicly aligning himself with institutional reform. Additionally, Daniel continued, I will personally match any donation withdrawn in protest of these changes. Twice over. The message was clear. The old power dynamics had shifted. The protection that wealth had provided to some would now extend to all. As the assembly concluded, students filed out in groups rather than the usual cliques. Conversations bridged social divides that had seemed impenetrable just days before. Something fundamental had changed, not just policies on paper, but the invisible architecture of power and silence that had defined their world. In the front row, Jamal turned to Lily. Are you okay? She nodded, a small smile breaking through. Better than okay. Daniel watched their interaction, seeing something he had missed before. His daughter wasn't just surviving her school experience. With the right support and the right allies, she could thrive in it. Outside, camera crews waited for statements. Inside, a community began the long process of healing and reconstruction. And in the space between, a father, a daughter, and a boy who had stood up when others sat down recognized the quiet power of presence, of being exactly where you're needed, exactly when you're needed there. As the assembly began to conclude, Principal Hammond turned to make his final remarks. Before he could speak, Daniel Carter raised his hand, gesturing toward the podium. Hammond hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside. Daniel approached the microphone, his hand resting lightly on Lily's wheelchair as she moved beside him. The auditorium, which had been buzzing with the energy of revelation and reform, quieted once more. I'd like to say something, if I may. Daniel began, his voice carrying clearly through the space. First, to Jamal Robinson. He turned toward where Jamal sat beside his mother, both still processing the morning's events. Young man, I want to thank you publicly for what you did for my daughter. In a world where looking away is easier than standing up, you chose courage. You chose protection over popularity, principle over peer pressure. Jamal nodded slightly, uncomfortable with the attention, but accepting the acknowledgement with quiet dignity. But, Daniel continued, his voice taking on new resolve, gratitude isn't enough. A murmur rippled through the audience. Daniel Carter was known for many things: business acumen, technological innovation, ruthless negotiation, but public sentiment had never been among them. 3 days ago, I didn't know Jamal Robinson existed, Daniel admitted. I didn't know that while I was building empires, a 13-year-old boy with more courage than most grown men was protecting my daughter when I failed to do so. He paused, gathering himself. I've since learned that Jamal's strength and discipline come from his late uncle, Marcus Robinson, a man who taught neighborhood children not just how to defend themselves, but when and why they should. Keisha Robinson's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes at the mention of her brother's name. Today, I'm announcing the establishment of the Marcus Robinson Memorial Scholarship Fund, Daniel declared. This fund will ensure Jamal's education is fully covered through college, any college of his choosing, and will provide similar opportunities for other students who demonstrate the values Marcus Robinson embodied: discipline, protection, and moral courage. The auditorium erupted in applause. Jamal sat perfectly still, his expression a complex mixture of shock, gratitude, and something deeper: the recognition that his uncle's legacy would continue. Additionally, Daniel continued when the applause subsided, Crestview Academy will be home to a new program starting next semester, the Robinson Initiative for Character Development. He outlined the program with the same precision he once reserved for business presentations. A comprehensive approach combining self-defense training focused on empowerment rather than aggression. Conflict resolution workshops, teaching students to de-escalate tensions before they became confrontations. A mentorship system pairing students across economic and social backgrounds to break down the invisible barriers that divided them. An anti-bullying ambassador program, giving students leadership roles in maintaining a culture of respect. This initiative, Daniel explained, will be available to every student at Crestview, regardless of background or financial means. And I've asked Jamal Robinson, if he's willing, to help design the curriculum, to ensure it honors the teachings his uncle shared with him. Jamal's eyes widened slightly. Then he nodded, accepting the responsibility with characteristic seriousness. The announcement represented millions in funding, years of institutional commitment. The board members exchanged glances, half amazed, half calculating the prestige such a program would bring to Crestview. Parents whispered among themselves, recognizing that Daniel Carter had just changed the school's trajectory with the same decisiveness he brought to business acquisitions. But what happened next silenced every whisper. Daniel stepped away from the podium, wheeling Lily to the center of the stage. Then, in full view of the entire school community, he knelt beside her wheelchair. Not the perfunctory half-kneel of an adult speaking to a child, but fully on both knees, making himself smaller than his daughter. He took her hands in his voice no longer amplified by the microphone, but carrying through the silent auditorium nonetheless. "Lily," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I built companies, but failed at what mattered most, being your father." Tears streamed freely down his face now. The billionaire CEO stripped of pretense and power, just a father facing his greatest failure. "I wasn't there when you needed me," he continued. "That changes today. No more missed appointments, no more broken promises. You are my priority. Not deals, not mergers, not empires. You." Lily's own tears fell as she leaned forward in her wheelchair. "I just wanted you, Dad," she whispered, though in the perfect silence of the auditorium, everyone heard. "Not your money, just you." She fell into his embrace, father and daughter holding each other, as if making up for 3 years of distance in a single moment. The raw vulnerability of it. This titan of industry on his knees. This girl in her wheelchair finding strength in forgiveness, moved even the most cynical observers. Teachers wiped away tears. Students watched in stunned silence. Parents held each other's hands, some making silent promises of their own. When the assembly finally concluded, students filed out, transformed, not just by policies or programs, but by witnessing authentic human connection, breaking through the carefully maintained facades of privilege and power. As the crowd dispersed, Jamal approached Lily and her father near the stage. "Thank you," he said simply, "for speaking up. You were brave too." Lily smiled, wiping the last tears from her cheeks. "We both were." She extended her hand. "Friends?" "Friends," Jamal agreed, taking her hand. It was the beginning of a genuine friendship. Two children who understood what it meant to be underestimated for different reasons, who recognized in each other a quiet strength that had nothing to do with physical ability or economic status. Nearby, Keisha Robinson stood in conversation with Daniel Carter, still processing the morning's events. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, her hospital badge still clipped to her purse. She would head directly to her shift after this. Marcus would be proud, Daniel finished for her, of his nephew, and of you for raising such an extraordinary young man. Keisha nodded, unable to find words for the emotions overwhelming her. The scholarship meant security. It meant opportunity. It meant her brother's name would live on in ways she could never have provided alone. The video of the courtyard confrontation, already viral locally, exploded globally in the days that followed. Edited clips of the assembly joined it. Jamal's speech, Daniel's announcement, the father-daughter moment that humanized a billionaire overnight. Millions watched. Thousands commented. Hundreds of schools reached out to inquire about implementing similar programs. Justice for Jamal evolved into Jamal Effect as students across the country found courage to speak up against bullying. #Defend Lily became a rallying cry for disability advocates, highlighting the unique challenges faced by students with physical disabilities. At Crestview Academy, the changes weren't just institutional, but individual. Tyler, Marcus, and Brad began the long, difficult process of genuine rehabilitation. Not just apologies, but the harder work of understanding the damage they had caused and finding ways to make amends. Their path wouldn't be easy or quick, but it had begun. 6 weeks later, Daniel Carter sat in the waiting area of Lily's physical therapy center, fully present. His phone remained in his pocket, notifications silenced. He watched through the glass partition as his daughter worked with her therapist, her determination evident in every movement. When the session ended, he didn't check emails or make calls. Instead, he listened as Lily described her progress, celebrating small victories that once would have seemed insignificant compared to billion-dollar deals. Together, they drove to the community center where the first pilot program of the Robinson Initiative was launching. The Carter Foundation had renovated the space, once a neglected gym, now a bright, accessible training facility. Inside, Jamal stood at the center of a circle of students from various schools, including Crestview. He moved with the same quiet confidence he had shown in the courtyard, demonstrating a simple blocking technique. "Remember," he told the group, echoing his uncle's teachings, "this isn't about hurting others. It's about protecting yourself and those who need protection." Lily sat nearby, volunteering as an assistant, helping younger students understand the modifications for different abilities. Her wheelchair, once a source of shame under the bullies' taunts, now represented another form of strength as she showed other children with disabilities how to adapt the techniques. Daniel watched from the doorway, seeing his daughter truly happy, not just smiling for his benefit or pretending things were fine, but genuinely engaged, valued, seen. The transformation in her since that day in the courtyard was remarkable. She sat taller in her wheelchair. She spoke with newfound confidence. She had friends who saw beyond her disability to the person she truly was. And he had changed too. The ruthless CEO still ran his company, still made deals and developed technologies. But he left the office at 5. He attended every therapy session. He knew the names of Lily's friends and teachers. He was, finally, the father she deserved. As the class ended, students gathered their things, chatting animatedly. Parents arrived for pickup. many stopping to thank Jamal or to speak with Daniel about expanding the program to their schools. In the midst of the activity, Daniel caught Lily's eye across the room. She smiled. Catherine's smile, he realized with a pang of bittersweet recognition, and he knew that somewhere, somehow, his wife would be proud of the healing they had finally begun. They mocked a girl for her wheelchair, dismissed a boy for his poverty. They thought cruelty ruled their world, but when courage met privilege, when discipline met desperation, everything changed. Jamal Robinson didn't need wealth to be a hero. He carried his uncle's code. Protect the weak, stand for what's right, find strength in discipline rather than dominance. Daniel Carter learned that being present beats being powerful, that all his towers and technologies meant nothing compared to the simple act of kneeling beside his daughter when she needed him most. And Lily discovered she was never weak, just waiting for the world to see her strength, waiting for her voice to be heard, waiting for someone to stand beside her rather than above her. In a world that measures worth by wealth and power, they reminded each other of a different truth. Sometimes, the quietest courage changes everything. Sometimes, the most powerful act is simply showing up, standing firm, and refusing to look away when others suffer. Sometimes a single moment of protection can heal wounds 3 years in the making. Sometimes the unexpected move isn't a strategy or a calculation, but simply doing what's right when it matters most.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.